I think one of the strangest parts about that entire period of my life was how normal I probably looked to everybody else. And that's the dangerous thing about silent suffering. From the outside, people often only see functionality, not pain. Most people around me at that time probably saw a guy running his own business, a husband, a father, somebody disciplined enough to be sea swimming early in the morning. And because I was very private and very self-contained, people filled in the blanks themselves. But internally, I was holding myself together with routine, silence and cold water. And there were days where I genuinely don't think people around me realised how mentally close to the edge I actually was. I never really spoke to anyone down at the swimming areas about my personal life. I wasn't down there to socialise. If anything, I was trying to escape my own thoughts long enough to function. So I kept everything surface level, quiet, polite, contained. Which in hindsight probably made me seem maybe emotionally distant. But the truth was, I was exhausted, emotionally exhausted. I think when human beings are struggling deeply internally, they often become experts at appearing okay externally. And I became very good at that. Too good at it, probably. What I think people struggle to understand sometimes is how easy it is for somebody to look functional while internally falling apart. Because externally my life still looked relatively normal. I was still working, still showing up, still communicating, still functioning, but internally everything felt heavy, and I became very good at hiding that heaviness, not intentionally in a manipulative way, more because I genuinely didn't know how to explain what was happening inside of me. I think when people can't visibly see pain, they often assume it doesn't exist. But some of the deepest suffering happens internally, quietly, behind routines, behind smiles, behind productivity. And I became incredibly skilled at carrying emotional weight privately while trying to appear stable publicly. There were mornings where I'd walk towards the sea feeling emotionally exhausted before the day had even begun. Not dramatic exhaustion, soul level exhaustion. The kind where your nervous system feels permanently overloaded, where even simple interactions can feel mentally heavy. And because I kept so much inside, people around me probably had no idea how intense that internal pressure had become. I think that's why the sea started meaning so much to me psychologically, because it became one of the only places where I didn't feel like I had to perform being okay. The water didn't require anything from me. No explanations, no image, no emotional mask, just presence. And when you've been carrying internal chaos for long enough, that kind of silence becomes medicine. I became very good at wearing masks during that time. Work became one. Routine became one. Humour also became one. Even discipline became one. And I think people often misunderstand functioning behaviour. Just because somebody still gets up, still works, still trains, still smiles occasionally, doesn't mean they're okay. Sometimes those routines are the only things keeping a person together psychologically. And for me, the sea became one of those things. There's something incredibly humbling about admitting now that there were periods where sea swimming genuinely stopped me from spiralling into a very dark place mentally. And I don't say that dramatically, I'm just being honest. Because there were mornings where getting into that water was the only moment during the day where my nervous system softened. The only place where I wasn't thinking constantly. The only place where the noise reduced enough for me to breathe properly. And when I got out, I'd often feel emotional walking back to work. And I'll be honest, under my hood of my dry robe, I would be sobbing. Not because I was weak, but because for that short amount of time, I felt free. Free from expectation, free from overthinking, free from pressure, free from identity. And then, of course, slowly reality would start returning again. I think one of the hardest things during that time was how lonely emotional pain can become when you don't know how to express it properly. Especially as a man, because men are often taught indirectly to contain, to tolerate, to suppress, and to continue. And I did continue every day. But internally I was becoming quieter and quieter inside myself. And that wasn't peaceful quiet, that was withdrawn quiet. And there's a difference. And the more I disconnected, I became emotionally from people, the more connected I became to the sea. Which sounds strange saying that out loud. But nature never judged me. The sea never asked me questions I couldn't answer. It never expected me to explain myself. It simply met me exactly where I was every morning. Calm some days, violent other days. Almost like a mirror of my internal state. Looking back now, I don't think I realised how close I was to completely burning out emotionally. Because when you're inside survival mode, you normalise things that aren't normal. You normalise emotional numbness, heavy drinking, isolation, exhaustion, and the internal chaos. Because surviving becomes the priority, not thriving, just surviving. And I think that's why this period matters so much to me now. Because although it was painful, it taught me something incredibly important. Human beings are carrying far more than they show. Far more. Some of the strongest looking people you know may actually be fighting battles privately that nobody around them fully sees. And sometimes the difference between somebody coping and somebody collapsing can be one quiet ritual that keeps them anchored. And for me, that ritual was the sea. When I think back to that version of myself now, I don't feel embarrassment anymore. I feel compassion, because he was trying his best to survive with the emotional tools he had available at that time. And despite everything, he still kept showing up every morning, still walking towards the water, still trying. Even when nobody around him truly understood why.